Hey everybody, my name is Spencer Stanley, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about my SLOG3 workflow, specifically using Phantom LUTs.
Just like a cool breeze jet.
Now, on this channel, I've talked a lot about Phantom LUTs and their usefulness, just how much I love them for Sony footage, SLOG3 footage, but you can use Phantom LUTs on a lot of different cameras, including Canon now, the Mavic 3, Blackmagic cameras, and I'm sure Joel is going to make a lot more LUTs for different systems. So I'm gonna go into Premiere Pro because that is the software that I use for color grading. I know it's not the best. I really hate it actually. I'm literally using Premiere Pro 2021 right now because I can't get A7S3 footage to work in the newest Premiere. It's just problem after problem with Premiere. It is what I use, it's what I know how to use, and I really don't have the patience to try and learn DaVinci, although I know it is a superior program when it comes to color. Okay, so the most important thing that we wanna do today is make sure we are editing the footage before we are applying the LUT. In DaVinci, this is really easy because you use nodes and you just, I guess, apply the LUT at the end of those nodes. In Premiere Pro, it's a little different, and I have a specific way that I do it myself. There's a couple different ways that you could do it, but I'm gonna show you my way. I find it really efficient, and it's the way that I like to do it. I don't understand the complete technical reason why we shouldn't do this, but it just doesn't work. Trust me, it doesn't work. So we want to do all of our corrections under the applied LUT, but we can use the LUT to kind of view what we're correcting. And I'm going to show you how to do that now. For time's sake, I have picked a bunch of clips here, and I'm going to show you my process and workflow with color. I have my program monitor here on the top right. Normally, I would use my MacBook Pro for my program monitor because it's just more accurate in terms of the colors. I'm using the Samsung monitor and it kind of sucks. So if the colors are a little off, I'm gonna blame it on that. This is my workflow. So the first thing that I always do is I have a project folder here already set up. If you wanna learn a little bit more about how I set up my project folders, I have a video of it. I'll link that below. But this is the Premiere project folder that I have set up for all my YouTube videos. So I'm gonna take this, we wanna take an adjustment layer and move it onto our footage and put it over all of our footage. Now, if you don't have one set up right there like I do, you just right click, new item, and you hit adjustment layer, and then you pick your video settings to match your sequence. So now that we have one adjustment layer here, I'm gonna hold Alt and raise that up and drop it. So I'm duplicating it. This is what we're gonna use as our nodes. Instead of adding a bunch of different effects on each file or editing the files individually, we're gonna use adjustment layers to adjust our footage like nodes. The first adjustment layer, I'm gonna apply my LUT. Typically with Phantom LUTs, I'm using neutral or tungsten. I really personally think tungsten looks the best. It's my favorite, so it's the one that I kind of go to the most. I really like how the blues look in it, in the shadows. I find neutral is a lot more kind of purpley, magenta-y. I don't know if that's the right way to really describe what it is. I find that I like the tungsten one the best. What I would do now is I would look at this footage, and honestly, it looks good. Theoretically, I really don't have to do anything to it. This clip looks good. It's exposed properly. One thing for the Sony shooters, the SLOG3 shooters here, Joel talks about in the Phantom LUTs that you can kind of expose for your eye, and I love that. I don't like getting too technical. I just like looking at a monitor that is accurate and being like, okay, yeah, that's what I want. I don't want to look at exposure compensation, EI, like I'm not interested in getting too technical when it comes to that. We want to make sure that everything's exposed properly and be able to monitor that with like a histogram or something. But I just want to look at something and be like, yeah, that looks good. The nice thing about SLOG3 footage, which I find, is we have a lot of latitude in post. So if we overexpose it, that is the best. We don't want to underexpose it because we can take down quite a bit of the highlights. I find there's a lot of room in the highlights that we can play with, but I think it is best to just try and expose this perfectly out of camera. That's how you're gonna get the best results. We have the LUT on the top adjustment layer here so that we can edit the bottom. Now this is where we're gonna make all our adjustments, this bottom layer. And what I typically do is I will make all my adjustments, like if all this footage was the same and it was the same exposure, I would just keep this as is. But since these are all different clips, I'm gonna go to this next clip here and cut that at each different clip so that we can edit each clip individually for its exposure, for all of that. Because some of these are overexposed a little bit. These are a bit older, so it kind of depends. So let's take a look at this one. The first thing that I would do would be a color correction. It's a little green. I might want to warm this up just a little bit. So I'm gonna add a +5 on my temperature. I'm gonna play around with this tint here to kind of see what looks good. That looks good to me. We could also use our Lumetri scopes. I typically have these open here. If I have my program monitor on this monitor, like this looks good. I'm not gonna play around because it takes too long because we're in Premiere. So this looks good to me. I'm liking where the colors are at. Like I could go warmer, Nah, it's too warm. I kind of like where this is at here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go into my curve. So this is the biggest adjustment that I make to my footage. And I almost always do an S curve on the footage. I like a lot of contrast. So I wanna bring these blacks down a bit, and then I wanna compensate by bringing up the highlights quite a bit. Now this might be a little too much in the blacks. I'm just gonna touch those blacks down a tiny bit. And that's the difference that we've made. So warmer and a little bit more contrast, maybe a little too much contrast. At the end of the day, this is all personal preference. The footage that I color corrected and graded a year ago is gonna look a lot different than how I do it now because my preference has changed and the way that I look at footage has changed. This is really kind of up to your personal style and taste. I hate when people are like, there's one way that you have to do everything because it's all artistic expression. As long as you're not butchering the footage, butchering the audio, like just do what you want, make it look how you want. Some people have crazy color grades that they add to their footage on top of the Phantom LUTs. I don't like that. I like something that looks natural, filmy, artistic, not necessarily natural, but like a very filmy look to it. That is pretty much what I would do to this. We can go into our color wheels and we can kind of start playing with some different things here. If you wanted to add some blue to the shadows, you like kind of like a teal blue shadow look. Now we're getting to an interesting look and we want to, you know, add some warmth to the highlights. Let's take a look and see how this changed it. I personally like the way that it was. But you could just start adding a bit of a different grade. I usually leave it the way it is because for one, I don't have a lot of time when I'm doing this, especially for client work. I really like the way that these LUTs look as is. So I just kind of leave them. So that's my color correction. Boom. That's about all I would do. Let's take a look at this clip here. So this is one of my favorite clips that I've taken. This is my girlfriend, Steph, and we're at the golf course. It's just beautiful. This is at sunset. This is like this is when I started using Phantom LUTs and I was just like, I was pumped with them and I just kind of started using the FX6. So I was just blown away by how good this footage looked. So let's take a look at this. I'm gonna go to my adjustment layer here. I'm gonna do what I always do. We're gonna go to Lumetri Color. Honestly, this looks pretty good to me. What I typically like to do is take the temperature and go to the extreme so that I could see what I like better. So let's say we go 10 here, that's too extreme. So then I would go 5 and then I would go 0. Okay, I like it a little warm. We're at sunset, so let's do 5. And then I might do 5 on that. It was sunset, so there was some purple to it. I kind of like this. It's a little over dramatized. But I like the green too. If we just add like a little bit of magenta into there, I think that looks nice. Let's take a look at the difference. So that's original. It's very kind of teal and green. We added some warmth and some magenta, so I like that. Now we're gonna go to our curves. I'm gonna just increase the shadows quite a bit so we could kind of sculpt the picture a little bit. And I like that. I think that looks really nice there. And then we're just gonna bring up the highlights. We have a lot of contrast going on there. So let's look at the original. A lot more flat, more teal, not warm. And you know, this might be a little too much, but I like that. I think that looks really good. And I just like kind of going back and forth saying, okay, do I like the corrections that I made? Do these make sense? So for me, that is about where I would leave this. I really like the way this looks. I think we took it from SLOG3. So look at that. And then we added the LUT. So we get a base look and we see how it's looking. And we go here. The one thing, this might look better with natural because it has a little bit of that purple. So let's take a look at what that looks like. Yeah, they both look good. I really like tungsten because it gives some teal in the shadows, but that looks good. I'm happy with that. It looks super cool. So this is actually the same clip. So what I would do here is I would just delete this extra one and I would just copy this over pretty much. And then you can take a look at that. Looks great. I think that looks unbelievable. Little contrasty, but that's what I like. Might be a little too contrasty on this one. More of the highlights, I think. And there, that looks really nice, really soft. Okay, here we have a clip. This is from a Porsche video that we did. This is with tungsten already applied. I think it looks a little soft. Okay, that part of the clip's not too great, but I thought this part was cool while we're driving through the construction. The client owns a construction company, so I thought this was kind of cool. She's driving her Porsche through the construction zone, even though she built homes, not construction, but I thought this was cool. It doesn't have enough contrast for me the way that it is, so I would bring down my blacks a little bit here, like usual. And then I would just bring up the highlights a little bit. I think that's starting to look quite nice. It's a little blue. So I would go about 5 here on my temperature. Yeah, I would just do -1 on the tint. I think that looks really nice. That looks good. I think that looks really nice as is. What I'm doing here is not necessarily correct. It's not necessarily wrong. Whatever you want to do is up to you, and it's kind of your preference. I think people try and get a little too technical nowadays, and people think they're right and wrong. I think everybody that wants to do something, just do it the way that you like it. At the end of the day, don't be worried about doing something wrong or incorrect or this and that. Just go and do something and figure out what you like and what works better. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I appreciate you watching it to the end. It's pretty impressive, honestly. If you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. It means a lot to me. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Just like a cool breeze, Jack. Should take it in.